Welcome to this video entitled Fuaimniú na Gaeilice, Fuaimniú na Gaeilice, Fuaimniú na Gaeilice, Gaelic pronunciation. Of course, it's impossible to comprehensively cover the pronunciation of any language in one video. However, this video shall endeavour to be as comprehensive as possible. Whilst it adheres, generally speaking, to the standard written form of modern Gaelic, it does also deal primarily with Ulster's the pronunciation of Gaelic in Ulster and how that differs from the other dialects. So to begin with, how are words in Gaelic stressed? In the vast majority of words, the stressed syllable is the first syllable, at least in the Ulster dialect and the Connacht dialect. However, the Munster dialect, this can differ sometimes. Here are a few examples. Words just to hear the stress, just to hear that first syllable being stressed. Athran, athran, meaning mass. Hatta, hatta, meaning hat. Dinja, dinja, meaning person, human being, or man. Elephant, 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 meaning elephant. As in any language, of course, there are always some exceptions, and here are some common words that are exceptions, that is, they're not stressed on the first syllable. Anseo, anseo, meaning here. Anish, anish, meaning now. Amwarach, amwarach, meaning tomorrow. Inu, inu, meaning today. Ata, ata, meaning which is. Awan, awan, meaning one. It is worth just mentioning that the Ulster and Connacht dialects mostly keep to the aforementioned rule. Munster Gaelic, as I was saying earlier, is the dialect that breaks this rule the most. The words will still be, of course, recognisable, even if they are stressed differently. It's no different to how English dialects choose to stress different syllables also. For example, in my dialect of English, I stress the name of the capital of Northern Ireland differently to standard English. I say Belfast instead of Belfast. So you can hear the subtle difference there, same word, but being pronounced differently, both meaning Belfast or Belfast. So I say Belfast as opposed to Belfast, but it's still recognisable, it's just stressed differently. So now that we've dealt with stress, we move on to Gaelic vowels. So we'll start with the short vowels. So we have A, E, I, O, and U, just as in English. So for the vowel A, here are some examples. We have Sagart, Sagart, meaning priest. Fada, Fada, meaning long. For the vowel E, short vowel E, we have Jesh, Jesh, meaning right hand or right hand side. We have Che, Che, meaning hot or warm. For the short vowel I, we have Minnock, Minnock, meaning often or frequent. We also have Mick, Mick, meaning sons. We have, for the short vowel O, Doris, Doris, meaning door. And Solace, Solace, meaning light. Then for the short vowel U, we have Cur, Cur, meaning sowing, planting, or tillage. Then we have Murra, Murra, meaning if not or unless. We now move on to the Gaelic long vowels, of which there are 5, and they are written with an acute accent over them to indicate their length, in fact, to show that they are long vowels. So we start with the long vowel A, and here are some examples for it as well. We have Ta, Ta, meaning is. Boad, Boad, meaning boat. Then for the long vowel E, we have May, May, which could also be pronounced as if the accent wasn't there. Ma, Ma, meaning I or me. Then we have Kiad, Kiad, meaning 100 or 100. Then for the long vowel I, we have Mila, Mila, meaning 1,000, 1,000 or a mile. Then we have Shilim, Shilim, meaning I think or I believe. Then for the long vowel O, we have Bo, Bo, meaning cow. Pogue, Pogue, meaning a kiss. And then for the long vowel U, we have Sul, Sul, meaning of eyes. So the genitive form, the possessive form, the genitive form. And then we also have Tu, Tu, meaning you, singular. So just continuing on with the long vowels, we have here just the information that the long vowels here have an acute accent mark placed above them, as you saw on the previous page. In Gaelic, this is called a shinu fada, shinu fada, shinu fada, or a length accent. Sometimes it's just called a fada, fada, fada for short. Note well that in some instances, long vowels are not marked with a shinu fada. For example, the word majin, 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 meaning morning, is spelt as if is spelt without a long vowel on the final I, but it's pronounced as if it had that, and it means morning. However, the vast majority of words will have the correct accentuation written, so that you'll be able to tell whether it's long or short. Now, just moving on to Gaelic consonants. As mentioned briefly in the video entitled Banarthy Bonuthahe, or basic greetings, there's a spelling rule which is fundamental to Gaelic spelling. That rule, of course, is Coil le coil agus Latin le Latin, slender with slender and broad with broad. This is referring to the fact that in Gaelic, the 5 vowels, whether long or short, are classified as either broad or slender. The broad vowels in Gaelic are A, O, and U, whilst the slender vowels are E and I. In linguistic terms, the slender vowels create what are called palatalized consonants, and the broad vowels create what are called velarized consonants. Every Gaelic consonant, apart from the letter H, therefore has a broad and a slender consonant variant. That means, for example, that there's a slender B and a broad B, and a slender C and a broad C. Digressing briefly, why are slender consonants palatalized and why are broad consonants velarized? Well, linguistically, palatalization is a form of secondary articulation during which one's tongue is raised towards the hard palate. The hard palate is the bony part of the roof of the mouth. This secondary articulation occurs during the pronunciation of a slender consonant. This palatalization occurs in both Gaelic and Gaelic in Scotland, and also in Russian. Something similar in Russian. They call it hard and soft consonants in Russian. It is sometimes represented as a sort of Y sound, the palatalization, that is. Conversely, or oppositely, velarization is a form of secondary articulation during which one's tongue is raised towards the soft palate, or the velum, in the mouth. The soft palate, or the velum, involves the movement of the back of the tongue up towards the soft palate, or the velum. This part of the mouth is softer, whilst the front part of the mouth is more bony and hard, hence why there are 2 palates, a hard palate and a soft palate, or a velum. This coil le coil agus Latin le Latin rule is so important in Gaelic because it can actually change the meaning of a word. Therefore, slender and broad consonants are key to the Gaelic language. They're not an optional extra. This may seem like an awful lot of information, but it will all begin to make sense when you begin to hear Gaelic words pronounced aloud. Just remember for now that the slender vowels are E and I, and that the broad vowels are A, O, and U. So now for some examples of both slender and broad consonants and vowels. Remember the consonant sequences or syllables are mostly either all slender or all broad, although in some compounds this rule is not kept. Thus, to start with the letter B, we have an example here, a slender example for the letter B. We have B, 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 which means to be, and then we have a broad example, which is bui, 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 meaning yellow. So you can hear the difference there, B and bui, B and bui. B being slender, meaning to be, and bui being broad and meaning yellow. Then moving on to the letter C, we have cuin, 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 which is a slender example of a slender C, and it means either calm or silent. So just continuing on with the letter C, we have another slender example. We have the word crack, 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 meaning conversation or fun, crack, crack. Then we have 2 broad examples for the letter C. We have cool, cool, meaning back, and we have back, 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 meaning hindrance. Then for the letter D, we have two slender examples. We have daje, 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 meaning daddy, and we have boaj, boaj, meaning boots. So those are both slender. And here are two broad examples for the letter D. We have the word tada or dada, tada, dada, meaning nothing. And we have the word boad, boad, meaning boat. Then for the letter F, we have fiche, fiche, and this is another one of those where the letter I here is in some dialects anyway pronounced long, even though it's spelt short. Fiche, fiche, meaning 20, as a slender example for the letter F. And we have the word fui, 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 which means under or about, and that's a broad example for the letter F. Moving on now to the letter G, we have two slender examples here also. We have Gael, 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 meaning jaw or cheek, and that's of course slender. We have Iga, 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 meaning at him or at it, and that's slender also. Now we have two broad examples also. We have the word Gael, 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 meaning, sorry, yes, Gael, 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 meaning relative, Gael, and that's broad. And then we have egg a, meaning at his or at her, and that's broad also, broad G example. Moving on to the letter L, we have lenia, 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 meaning shirt, which is slender. Then we have al, al, meaning al, al, meaning cliff, and that's slender. We have two broad examples here for the letter L also. We have lay, 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 meaning of a day. Then we have al, 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 meaning litter. That is a litter of animals, and that's another as a broad example. Moving on to the letter M, we have mean, 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 meaning smooth or level. We have anim, 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 meaning name, which is slender. We have muin, 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 which means gift or benefit, and that's a broad example. We then have anim, anim, meaning soul, which is a broad example. Now you'll notice here there's actually quite a similar pronunciation to between anim and anim and anum, anum. The difference here is the slender n and the broad n. The word anim, anim, has the has a broad n, sorry, a slender n, and you can hear the slight sort of nearly y or glide or slight sort of slight difference in pronunciation. It's not an yim, it's anim, 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 and for name, and then anum, anum, anum for soul. So you can hear that slight difference there. So just moving on to the letter N, we have two slender examples for it. We have knee, 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 meaning washing or thing, slender, knee, knee, knee. Then we have cunia, 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 meaning calmness or silence, cunia. Then we have two broad examples for the letter N. We have nai, 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 meaning nine, and guna, guna, meaning gown or robe. And you can hear the contrast there between knee and nai. And it's important there to make the slender and broad distinction so you know whether one means washing or thing or the number 9. Then moving on to the letter P, we have pan, pan, meaning pen, which is slender, pan, slender, and pay, pay, which is pay or wages. And that's a broad example for the letter P, and that's of course borrowing from English, no doubt. Either English or French. I'm not sure that as the etymology of that word. I think it's originally French, but it's pronounced pay, pay. Then we have the letter R, two slender examples for it. We have kiri, kiri, ki, ri, kiri, kiri, meaning sheep, kiri, kiri, kiri. And then we have, as a slender example, we have moed, 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 moit, meaning great of or many, another slender example. There were two broad examples which actually parallel the two previous examples. We have cuira, 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 meaning sheep, and that's a broad example. And we have more, 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 great or many, and that's a broad example. Then for the letter S, we have a slender example. We have she, 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 meaning she or it. We have a broad example. We have see, 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 meaning seat or location. So we have she and see. Then for the letter T, we have chew, 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 meaning thick or fast, and that's a slender example. Then we have ach, 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 meaning pleasant or excellent, another slender example. Then we have two broad examples for the letter T. We have two, 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 meaning you or thou, and it's the singular you of modern English, which is a broad example. Then we have at, 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 swelling, which is a broad example of the letter T. And you can hear the difference again between at, which is the slender word meaning pleasant or excellent, and at, which is swelling, and it's a broad example. Next, we move on to the double L and the double N. So when the letters L and N are doubled in Gaelic, they are pronounced differently, depending on whether or not the double L or the double N are part of a slender consonant cluster, or whether they are part of a broad consonant cluster. When the letter L is part of a slender consonant cluster, the first L is pronounced as an L, and the second L is pronounced as if it were a Y. Likewise, when the letter N is part of a consonant cluster, the first N part of a slender consonant cluster, the first N is pronounced as an N, and the second N is pronounced as if it were a Y. For a broad consonant cluster, both double L and double N are simply held slightly longer than single consonants. There is no Y sound in these broad consonant clusters. Here are some examples. So, for the double L, in the slender example, for this, as a slender example, we have aljart, 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 yart, aljart, aljart, meaning beauty or delight. And as a broad example for the double L, we have Alice, 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 meaning sweat or perspiration. Now we move on just to the double N. Some examples for it. We have a slender example, which is banya, 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 meaning milk, banya. And then a broad example, which is bana, 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 which means band, a musical band. Now we move on to Gaelic diphthongs. So the Gaelic language, just like English, also has a number of diphthongs or vowel combinations. First of all, we shall consider the Gaelic diphthong ia, 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 I and a. Here are some examples. Bia, 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 meaning food. Keel, 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 meaning sense or sanity. Blian, 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 meaning year. Next, we shall consider the diphthong ue, ue, ue. Here are some examples. We have nua, 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 meaning new, nua, nua. Then we have tua, 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 meaning people, tribe, or petty kingdom. Then we have nuit, nuit, not nuer. This is a slender R, it's not a broad R, it's not a r, it's not a r. It's a nuit, nuit, nu is, nuit, 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 meaning when. Then we have the diphthong I, and I've just sort of phonetically spelt it here in speech marks as AI, I, as in the English word I, though it is never spelt thus in Gaelic. In Gaelic, it has four possible spellings. We have AGH, AIGH, ADH, and AIDH. Here are some examples. Iark, I-ark, Iark, 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 meaning a horn, an animal that is. Then we have I'm, I'm, meaning aim or purpose. Then we have I, meaning face. Then we have steire, a stair or stairs. Next we have the Gaelic diphthong ow, ow or ow, as we say, as in the English word cow, though it is never spelt OW here. Once again, it is never spelt this way in Gaelic. I just realised I've written that twice. It can be spelt ABH, AMH, and OGH. You may come across some other examples or some other digraphs used to write this, but these are the most common. Here are a few examples for this diphthong. So we have iron, 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 meaning river. However, in Ulster, iron is pronounced Owen, Owen, O-N, Owen, Owen. However, the standard pronunciation would be, just for the sake of maintaining the OW sound here, it would be iron, 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 river. Then we have, pardon me, then we have Sauru, 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 meaning summer. Then we have Raya, 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 choice or alternative. Now we move on to understanding Gaelic spelling. Some folks often remark that Gaelic spelling is mad or senseless, though this is not the case, especially not as you now know about the rule cool le cool agus Latin le Latin, slender with slender and broad with broad. Some Gaelic vowels are not pronounced at all, so why are they there at all? Their chief aim is to show one whether or not the surrounding consonants are slender or broad. Let's have a look at an example that we've already seen. The word iron, or Owen, meaning river, contains the ABH diphthong at the start. The ABHA part of the word is broad, because we have two broad vowels, A and A. We have to have the silent A after the BH, as we must always have, if possible, the rules are sometimes broken, a broad consonant surrounded by broad vowels. Likewise, the INN part of the word is slender. In theory, if there was an extra syllable after INN, we would require a spelling like INNI or INNE to accommodate a new syllable. Now, if one sees a Gaelic vowel sequence with one vowel having a shinu fada, then the vowel with the shinu fada is the vowel that shall be pronounced. Here are some examples for each of the 5 Gaelic vowels. Let's start with the vowel A. So we have the name Shean, which is the Gaelic for John, Shean. However, most people in the Anglophone world, of course, will be familiar with this name being pronounced Sean. But in my small area of Gildem, we pronounce it as Shean. Then we have the word Ach, which means place, and it's just we saw the word earlier which was spelled the same but without the accent mark. So this is just pronounced slightly longer. Ach, meaning place. Another example we have is a hien, a hien, a hien, which is the vocative or addressing form for John. So that's O John, a hien. Then moving on to the vowel E, we have Seamus, meaning James. Then we have Caim, meaning a step or degree. Then move on to the vowel I. So some examples for the letter I, we have C, 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 meaning seat or location. We have Cree, 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 meaning heart. We have Skeely, 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 meaning storyteller. We have Bui, 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 meaning yellow. We have Buiachas, Bui, Achas, Buiachas, 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 meaning thanks or gratitude. Then we move on to the vowel O. We have Broige, 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 meaning of a shoe or of a boot. We then move on finally to the vowel U. U. We have Kush, 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 meaning cause or reason. We have Shul, 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 meaning a walk, a travel, or a journey. Then we have Kyun, 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 meaning calm or silent. Some Gaelic spelling sequences without a Shinu fada also represent long vowels. Here are some examples of these. The sequence AE or AEI is pronounced just like the letter A. So, for example, the word te, meaning tea or of tea. Then we have Gaelic, 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 or Gaelic, or Gaeliga, the Gaelic language. Then we have train, 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 meaning a train. Then we have the sequence AO or AOI, which is pronounced like the letter E. That is the letter I with an accent. Though in Ulster, the sequence AO can also be pronounced something like the U in the English word moon, so, which is personally how I choose to render it. So it's more like U, like in Scottish Gaelic. So, for example, we have the word sur, 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 meaning free. However, most Gaelic dialects outside of Ulster and outside specifically of Central Ulster, you'll hear seer, seer, seer. AO simply is E as opposed to U. Then we have nai, 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 AOI. So we have nai, 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 which means nine. Next, we have the vowel sequence EO or EOI, which is pronounced the same as the letter O. So O with a long accent. So we have with an accent. So we have lower, 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 meaning sufficient or ample. We have Q, meaning fog or mist. And we have Owen, 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 meaning John. Another way of saying John, however, especially in the biblical sense in this case, as opposed to Sheehan. There are other Gaelic vowel combinations or vowel sequences which are actually pronounced as short vowels. These include EA or EAI and AI, when AI is placed at the beginning of a word. So, for example, we have ban, 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 meaning woman. We have far, 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 meaning man. We have shakid, 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 jacket. We have aschach, 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 meaning wonderful or surprising. Then we have the short vowel sequence EI. This represents a short E vowel before a slender consonant. It is spelled EI at the beginning of words and in the middle of words. At the end of a word, however, it is simply spelled as E rather than EI. So, for example, we have kesht, 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 meaning question. We have ille, 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 meaning other or another. We have ber, 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 not bear, but ber, 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 which means bear or give birth to. We have che, che, meaning hot or warm, and we have misha, misha, meaning I or me. Then we have some other rules that apply to Gaelic spelling. AI after a consonant is pronounced as an A. So we have banish, 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 meaning wedding, and kalin, 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 meaning girl. Then we have IO is pronounced as an I. So we have fis, meaning knowledge, fis, fis, fis. OI is pronounced as an E or an I or sometimes as an O. So here are some examples. We have till, 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 meaning will or wish. We have erid, erid, rid, erad, erad, sorry, erad, er, erid, erad, erad, meaning length of time or distance. Erad, erad. We have skull, skull, meaning school. UI is pronounced as an I, so we have ishke, 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 meaning water, and fwil, 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 meaning blood. IU is pronounced as a U, so we have fluch, 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 meaning wet. So some common Gaelic words are, of course, exceptions to the aforementioned rules. Here are some examples. So for the digraph EA, we have bjug, 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 meaning small, bjug. For the digraph EO, we have shaw, shaw, meaning this, and ocher, 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 meaning key, ocher, not ocher, not ocher, ocher, but ocher, 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 meaning key. Then for the digraph OI, we have the word ilan, 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 meaning island. Ilan, ilan. In Ulster, when the letter N follows a consonant, it will often be pronounced as the letter R. Some examples for this include croch, 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 meaning hill, croch. This is pronounced as if it were spelled CROC. Then we have another example. We have mara, ra, mara, 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 meaning women, and this is pronounced as if it were spelled MRA. Another feature of Gaelic to be aware of is what is called the epenthetic vowel. This is when a vowel sound is inserted into a word. The purpose is either to simplify pronunciation or to break up difficult or unnatural sounding consonant clusters. One will often see this unwritten vowel being pronounced between consonant sequences of the letters L, R, N, and another consonant. Here are some examples. So, first of all, we have gorum, 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 meaning blue. Gorum, gorum, the color blue. This is pronounced as if it were spelled Goram. Then we have borub, 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 meaning fierce or violent. This is pronounced as if it were spelled Borab, borub, borub. Then we have jalov, jalov, and we have jalov, jalov, statue. This is pronounced as if it were spelled Dealibh, jalov, jalov, meaning statue. Then we have jalug, 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 meaning thorn or spine. This is pronounced as if it were spelled Dealag or Dealug, jalug, jalug. Then we have a word which we've already seen, anum, 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 meaning name. This is pronounced as if it were spelled Ainim. We now move on to what's known as initial mutations. And these mutations are ubiquitous throughout Celtic languages, whether it's Breton or uh, Cornish or Welsh or Gaelic. The three forms of Gaelic: the Scottish version, the Irish version, and the Manx version, was of course originally one language, hence why I refer to it as Gaelic. So in Gaelic, there are two forms of mutation. One is called lenition or shevu, 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 lenition, and the other is called eclipsis or uru, 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 u, uru. So shevu and uru. Shevu, I guess uru, lenition and eclipsis. Mutations involve change. Thus, initial mutations merely alter or change the pronunciation of words by altering the spelling and therefore the pronunciation of Gaelic words. Let's begin by looking at lenition first. So, lenition occurs more often than eclipses. Thus, it is the most common of the two Gaelic initial mutations. Any consonant that is being lenited, having lenition performed on it, has the letter H written after it. The pronunciation of lenited consonants can be either slender or broad. That is, there's a slender variant and a broad variant. Therefore, the lenited consonants are the following. So we'll start with the letter B. This becomes BH. In Ulster, the slender variant is pronounced like the letter V, whilst the broad variant is pronounced like the letter W. Note well, however, that historically, the broad variant was also pronounced as a V in Ulster also. One will hear this in recordings of County Antrim Gaelic in particular. So, for example, bus, meaning bus, becomes ma was, ma was, ma was, my bus, ma was. Not ma bus, but ma was, ma was. It simply makes it easier to say ma was, or um, Movus, Movus. So you can say Movus or Movus, V or W. It's personal choice, to be honest, to an extent. And Shiv, which means you in the plural. Then we have the letter C. This becomes CH. This is pronounced as CH or KH, though the slender and broad variants are spelt with the same digraph CH. They do actually sound a little different. For example, the Gaelic word loch, 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 meaning lake, is pronounced like the German name Bach, 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 Bach. And the word Eiche, 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 meaning night, is pronounced like the German pronoun Ich, 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 meaning I. The letter D, this becomes DH. Though once again, despite being spelled with the same digraph, DH, the slender and broad variants sound different. For example, ga goris, ga goris, ga goris, ga goris, two doors, is pronounced like ga goris, ga goris. There is no real English equivalent to the sound. One will simply have to practice replicating it in order to get it right. Another example is do yoch, do yoch, yoch. And this EO here is one of those exceptions where it's not do yoch, it's do yoch, shortened. Do yoch, 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 meaning you're a drink. Here, the DH at the beginning of the word for drink is pronounced like a Y sound. Then we move on to the letter F, the easiest one. This isn't pronounced at all. It is simply completely silent. It therefore neither has a slender or a broad variant, at least in terms of pronunciation. Moving on to the letter G, this becomes GH. The slender and broad variants are pronounced differently, though. The slender version is pronounced as a Y sound, so for example, mo, yan, si, moyansi, not mo, moyansi, 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 my pullover. The broad version is pronounced as a GH sound, but once again it has no real English equivalent. For example, sa garjin, sa garjin, sagarjin, 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 sagarjin in the garden. The letter M. This becomes MH. The slender and broad variants are once again pronounced differently here, at least in Ulster. The slender version is pronounced as a V sound. For example, gevru, 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 meaning winter. The broad version is pronounced as a W sound. For example, fower, 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 or fover, fover, if you wanted to pronounce it as a V, and that means autumn. The letter P, this becomes PH. The slender and broad variants of this lenited letter are actually pronounced much the same. Both are pronounced as an F sound. For example, ma foca, 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 meaning my pocket. So the letter S, this becomes SH. The slender and broad variants of this letter are pronounced roughly the same. They are pronounced as a H sound. For example, a hien, a hien, a hien, a hien, a hien, the vocative form of the Gaelic name Sheehan. The letter T, this becomes TH. Once again, there is not much difference between the slender and broad variants, at least in most words. They are pronounced as a H sound again. So, for example, mwahir, 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 meaning mother. So now we move on to eclipses, which is also sometimes called nasalization. As mentioned above, eclipses occurs less frequently than the lenition, and it affects fewer consonants also. Eclipses involves one consonant eclipsing or sort of replacing another. Both consonants are still written, however, only only one is pronounced. Therefore, we have, for the letter B example, this becomes MB and is pronounced as an M sound. For example, the word boad, meaning boat, would become moad, moad, with the B still written but the M being pronounced. So boad becomes moad, moad. The letter C, this becomes GC and is pronounced as a G, so as a G sound. For example, the word cat, cat, meaning cat, becomes gat, gat, gat. The letter D, this becomes ND and is pronounced as an N sound. For example, dun, 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 meaning fort, becomes nun, nun, nun. Letter F, this becomes BFH and is pronounced as a V sound. For example, the word far, far, meaning man, becomes var, var, v, as opposed to f. The letter G, this becomes NG and is pronounced as an NG sound, as in the English word sing. So, for example, ta ma imahone ing aliv. Ta ma e ma hone ing aliv. Not e naliv, but ing aliv. So the ing sound. Ing aliv. Ing aliv. Ing aliv. Ta ma mahone ing aliv. I live in Galway. The letter P, this becomes BP and is pronounced as a B sound. For example, the word pull, pull, P-O-L-L, pull, pull, meaning hole, would become bull, bull, B-P-O-L-L. The letter T, this becomes DT and is pronounced as a D sound, though the slender and broad variants differ here. For example, nai jach, nai jach, nai jach, nai jach. Naijach, Naijach means 9 houses, or and also a jigentu, a jigentu, a jigentu, a jigentu. Do you understand? Note well that when the N is not part of the base form of the trigger word, the word that causes eclipses, the N will then be added with a hyphen, so N and hyphen, before the affected word, the word that's being eclipsed in essence. So, for example, nai nura, nai nura, meaning 9 hours, and ar nuncle, 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 meaning our uncle. There are three other minor mutations, and they're not officially grammatically called minor. I've just labelled them as because they're less common. There are three other minor mutations which occur less frequently than the nition or eclipses do. These are the prefixation of the letter H, the insertion of the letter T, and the change of the letter S to the letter T. Thus, we have in number one the prefixation of the letter H. So, for example, Dania, meaning people, becomes Nadania, the people, but Offagi, offices, becomes Nahofagi, Nahofagi. So once again we have Dania, which becomes Nadania, and Offagi, which becomes Nahofagi, Nahofagi, Nahofagi. In number two, we have the insertion of the letter T. So, for example, the word Ian, 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 meaning bird, becomes a chian, a chian, a chian, a chian, a chian, a chian, meaning the bird. In number 3, we have the change of the letter S to the letter T. So, for example, the word straj, 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 meaning street, becomes a traj, a traj, a traj, a traj, a traj. So, sraj, sraj becomes a traj, a traj. We move on to the final section of this video entitled Verb Pronunciation in Gaelic. It would be impossible to explain all the nuances of Gaelic verb pronunciation all at once. I shall, however, take one verb, the verb canny, 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 meaning by, and use it as a paradigm to show how each Gaelic verb tense is pronounced. I shall spell the verb's different parts using the Acadian Officule, the official standard, but I shall also show how some verb parts would be spelt and pronounced in the Ulster dialect of Gaelic. This will explain why I'm pronouncing the verb's parts the way I am. So let's start with the past tense. An amsir, an amsir, an amsir hatche, 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 the past tense. So, this is quite phonetic, the past tense in Gaelic. Generally, for most verbs, it's pronounced the way it's spelt. So you have, in this case, Chiani ma, Chiani tu, Chiani she, Chiani she, Chiani mwij, Chiani shiv, Chiani shiad. Chiani ma, Chiani tu, Chiani she, Chiani she, Chiani mwij, Chiani shiv, Chiani shiad, meaning I bought the whole way down there to they bought. And you'll notice that I just said, instead of Chiani me, I said Chiani ma, because it gets shortened in everyday pronunciation to ma, Chiani ma. And likewise, instead of Chiani she, I said Chiana she, That also something in Ulster is shortened. One of the reasons I thought it's important to mention that is that these verb the best way to describe it is that it would be like in English if you kept saying I am here instead of I'm here all the time. If you didn't use any contractions, it would sound unnatural. So it's more natural speech in essence. So we move on to an amsir leichrach, an amsir leichrach, an amsir leichrach, an amsir leichrach, the present tense, which is canim, 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 canian tu, canian she, canian she, canian witch, canian shiv, canian she, canian shiad. So you'll notice this is also quite phonetic. It's pronounced roughly the way it's spelled. So we have this present tense. We have canim, canian tu, canian she, canian she, canian witch, canian shiv, canian shiad. Now we move on to an amsir astinach, an amsir astinach, an amsir astinach, an amsir astinach, the future tense. So you'll notice here I've given two forms of spelling, the one on the left being the modern standard form of spelling, and the one on the right in the brackets is the traditional Ulster spelling. You may wonder why I've done that. It's because each dialect really, whether it's Ulster, and remember that today in Ulster all that's really left is Donegal, but historically we've spoken the Gaelic language across the whole of Ulster at one time, so I'm sure there was even greater variation then. But each extant or living dialect, whether in Donegal, Connacht, or Munster, pronounces the verbs differently. You'll find in literature the one on the left spelling, the shorter spelling, is what you will find in modern literature. However, people will still pronounce the verbs as they know them, especially native speakers, obviously, will pronounce the verbs the way the way they traditionally do in their own dialect. So the way I will be pronouncing these verbs is actually in the brackets, but I will be spelling them if I was reading a book or writing them on the left, really, because this is how they choose. This is how the three dialects today mostly write the verbs. It's the agreed upon form, you could say, but they also know their own forms. The OCHAIDH ending actually is, I believe, an original form which has only really survived in Ulster, not in the other dialects. So, for example, I wouldn't pronounce this verb as can no e. I would pronounce it as ka na chi, kanachi. And you may wonder why I'm pronouncing this o in the brackets here. With as a short a, it's because in Ulster quite often, especially in verbs, the letter o, if it's not in the first syllable, gets reduced to a bit like Russian actually. It becomes a, so it's not ka no chi, it's kanachi, kanachi, ka na chi, kanachi, kanachi. So this verbal element, this part on its own, is pronounced kanachi. This first bit, this bit that each example has kanachi, kanachi. If you were to pronounce it on its own, you would say kanachi. However, before a pronoun, or when a pronoun comes afterwards, it gets reduced, so it doesn't become kanachi me or kanachi ma. It's ka na ha. It just becomes a short or ha. So instead of saying kanachi ma, I say kana ha ma, kanaha ma. And so now I'll go through all the different forms. Kanaha ma, kanaha tu, kanaha she, kanaha she, kanaha mwij, kanaha shiv, kanaha shiod. Kanaha ma, kanaha tu, kanaha she, kanaha she, kanaha mwij, kanaha shiv, kanaha shiad. So, as I say, if it was pronounced on its own, it would be kanachi, but when there's a pronoun coming afterwards, in the future tense, you reduce it to the sort of schwa sound, so it becomes ka, na, ha, ma, kanahama, etc. Next, we have amo conula, amo conula, amo conula, amo conula, amo conula, the conditional mood. So you'll notice again, just like the future tense, I've provided the Ulster spellings in the of this verb in this aspect or part, sorry, of the verb to buy in brackets and the standard spelling on the left. First thing I should just point out quickly is the U singular form doesn't differ in Ulster or the standard, so that's why I've put non-applicable there. We also have, you'll notice that the key difference in the O is still there. Look in the modern form, but the CH has disappeared, and that's only been retained in Ulster. So it's a bit to the best of my knowledge. So, for example, um, I'll go through this verb how it would be pronounced. So the first one is pronounced Hyanahin, Hyanahin, which would mean I would buy. I'm just realizing that in the future tense, and some of the others I haven't actually said what they mean, but you can see I've pronounced them in order. So you'll know the meaning will just be adjacent to the verbs here. So we have Hyanahin, uh, Hyanahin. Now the second one is Hyanocha, Hya, Hya, no, Ha. In some dialects, this F gets pronounced as an F, but also gets pronounced generally as a H. So it's not Hyanofa, but Hyanocha, Hyanocha, Hyanocha. So Hyanahin, Hyanocha. Then we have the sort of standard stem here. We have what looks like hya no hu, hya no hu, but it's not hya no hu she. I'll deal with the first part. So it's hya na, the O's reduced to an A because it's not part of the first syllable, just like the future tense. Hya na hu. So hya na hu. However, whenever this OCHADH ending comes before a pronoun beginning with S, so she, shiv, she'd, or before the two demonstrative pronouns shaw and shaw and shin, shaw and shin, left me there for a minute, so it did. Shaw and shin uh, as well. This ADH is not pronounced U, but is pronounced ach, AI, as if it was spelled AIT with a slender T. So we don't have hya na hu she, we have hya na hach, hya na hach she, Hianahatshe, 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 and at the end of this, later on in the video, I actually provide a sort of rough spelling for this just to explain this further. But we have Hianahatshe, Hianahatshi, Hianahumwidge, because it doesn't begin with an S, so it's Hianahumwidge, as it's spelt, more like as it's spelt. Hianahumwidge, Hianahatshiv, Hianahatshid. So I'll go through them all again. We have Hianahan, 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 Hianucha, Hianahatshe, Hianahatshi, Hianahumwidge, Hianahatshiv, and Hianahatshid. Next we have an Amshir Grahatche, 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 the imperfect tense. So this is also follows like the conditional mood whenever we have the A, I, O, D, H endings before a pronoun. It won't be it'll be H, 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 as if it was spelled AIT, the O, D, H. So we have Hyanin, 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 Hyanicha, Hyanicha, Hyanicha. Then we have, of course, this means I used to buy, etc. You can see on the screen there just each meaning, the exact meaning of each one. We have Hyanin, Hyanin, Hyanicha, Hyaniatshe, not Hyaniushe. We have Hyaniatshe, 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 Hyaniatshi, Hyaniatshi, Hyaniumwidge, Hyaniumwidge, because it doesn't begin with an M, Hyaniumwidge, Hyaniumwidge, Hyaniatshiv, Hyaniatshid. So, I'll go through them one last time. Hyanin, Hyanicha, Hyaniatshe, Hyaniatshi, Hyaniumwidge, Hyaniatshiv, and Hyaniatshid. Then we have Amu Ordahach, Amu Ordahach, Amu Ordahach, Amu Ordahach, Amu Ordahach, the imperative mood. So you'll notice here that I've highlighted 3 of these in white because these are the only 3 you're ever likely to use. The other 4 exist grammatically speaking in theory, but they're never really used because, of course, it's the imperative mood, it's the command mood. So it's either you're saying it to someone, you do this or that, or a group of people, you do that, or etc. So I'll go through them all. We have kanim, 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 kanim. Then we have kani, kani, kani. Then we have, now this time we have kaniushe, kaniushe. It's only in the conditional mood and the imperfect tense that we have that ach, to the best of my knowledge. So it's kaniushe, 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 kaniushi, 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 kaniumwidge, 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 kanigi, nigi, kanigi, kanigi. Then we have kaniu shiad. So I'll go through them all again. Kaniu shiad. Kanin, kanim, kanim, kani, kani, kaniusha, kaniusha, kaniushi, kaniushi, kaniumwidge, kaniumwidge, kanigi, kanigi, kaniushiad, kaniushiad. Then finally we have a for hitch ach, a for hitch ach, leichrach. A for hitch ach leichrach. A for hitch ach leichrach. A for hitch ach leichrach. A for hitch ach, a for hitch ach leichrach. The present subjunctive, which means something like may I buy, etc. So this is pronounced as spelt, you'll be glad to hear phonetically. So it's go, gan, ni, go, ga, ni, go, gani, ma, go, gani, ma, go, gani, tu, go, gani, she, go, gani, she, go, gani, mwij, go, gani, shiv, go, gani, shield. I'll go through those again. Go, gani, ma, go, gani, tu, go, gani, she, go, gani, she, go, gani, mwij, go, gani, shiv, go, gani, shield. These are just a few supplementary bits of information, a few bits of supplementary information regarding verbs, etc. And it is sort of important and becomes more important as you become more familiar with the spelling system, etc. So this section here is entitled Verb Pronunciation, Future Tense Devoicing. So the F of the first conjugation future suffix fidh or faidh may cause devoicing. This is another way of saying that a consonant goes from its voiced to its unvoiced form. For example, the letter G becomes the letter K. Normally, what we would expect is that the F here in the Ulster dialect would be pronounced as a H. However, when you get certain combinations of letters, um, this isn't the case. You get devoicing instead. So, for example, for this letter, for the letter G, for example, we don't get tig he she or tig he she. We get or tig he she. We get tigasha tigasha. So the G becomes a K. So if you have a G before this future tense ending, you'll know that it can become a K as opposed to a G. Tigasha, not tighisha, because it's harder to say tighisha when you think about it. It's tigasha. The H is lost altogether and it just becomes tigasha. He or it will understand. Tigasha. This next one you would expect lub he she or lub he she or lub he she if once it gets shortened before the pronoun, but it actually is lupisha. The B becomes a P. Lupisha, 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 lupisha. He or it will bend. This next one would expect gidge, he, she, or gidge, he, she, and then finally with the reduction for the pronoun gidge, he, she, gidge, he, she, but it's not gidge, he, she. Once again, that's quite stilted and hard to say. It's gidge, she. So the D becomes a C. In this case, it's slender, so it's not uh, gidge, she. It's gitche, she, gitche, she, gitch, she, gitche, she, gitche, she, gitch, she, gitche, she, gitche, she, meaning he or it will steal. Then this next one, one would expect the way it's spelt it to become snav, chi, she, or snav, chi, he, she, and then finally with the reduction before the pronoun, snav, he, she. Or even in the Ulster dialect, snow, this V sound, of course, could be a W, so instead of snav, one can end up getting snow, for nearly like snow for swimming. But we'll just stick with the V for now because the V is what parallels the what happens here. So we'll say snav, he, she, will actually become snaf, snaffisha. So the H, which is actually represented by the letter F there, and the FAIDH is lost altogether, and one simply gets the MHF becoming a snaffa, like the letter F. Pronunciation in English, snaffisha, 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 meaning he or it will swim. We also have, in terms of verb pronunciation, verbal adjective devoicing. So, like the future tense verb endings beginning with F, the suffix tha also causes the devoicing of the stem final B, C, D, G, and MHBH to which it is added. So, for example, if one gets G and then followed by TH, as mentioned above, GTH, one would expect to get tag ha, but also again that's quite stilted or hard to say. Tag ha meaning come or arrive, but it's actually pronounced taka, 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 taka. So the th just disappears when combined with these letters here, and becomes tak, becomes once again its devoiced form. So B becomes P, uh, etc. D becomes T, G becomes K, and MH or BH becomes F, and C, I believe, becomes, leaves me for now. I don't have an example there. I'll maybe put that in the description of the video. But uh, taka, so we get taka as opposed to tagha. tagha being stilted, not sounding natural, so we get taka, taka, taka. So why devoice any letters in the first place? I believe it is simply easier to pronounce certain words this way, and they therefore sound less stilted or unnatural sounding. So, as I said earlier, I just provide a bit more information on the suffix adh or odh with the fada, just to let you see or explain further just why certain pronunciation patterns are the way they are in verbs. So, the suffix adh or odh in Gaelic can cause certain verbal pronunciation patterns in Gaelic. These mainly affect certain endings in the Gaelic conditional mood, and vocandula, and the Gaelic imperfect tense, anamsir grahache, anamsir grahache, grahache, anamsir grahache. To be careful there to pronounce that slender R. These endings change their pronunciation when followed by the following pronouns or demonstrative pronouns. So we have she or she. She is the standard pronunciation, but in colloquial speech it gets reduced to she, meaning he or it. We have she, meaning she or it. We have shiv, the plural form of the word you. We have shiad, meaning they. We have shaw, meaning this, and shin, meaning that. You'll notice that all these pronouns and demonstrative pronouns begin with the letter S. They cause the written pronunciation of ADH, ODH, both of which are usually pronounced as U in Ulster, to become ach. Uh, um, even though it continues to be written ADH, ODH, when these pronouns or the two demonstrative pronouns shaw or shin come after uh, a verb with this ending, it will become ach as opposed to u. But say you have mwidge, for example, meaning we, muid, it will just stay u. Though the spelling does not change, as I've said there, so only the pronunciation changes. Let's now have a look at some examples from both the conditional mood and the imperfect tense, and I know we've already saw this earlier, but it's just for the sake of clarity, using the aforementioned verb we saw canny, canny, meaning by. So, for example, for the conditional mood, we have Hianahatshe, 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 meaning he or it would buy. Then we also have Hianahu Mwij, we would buy. Then we have, as an example for the imperfect tense, Hia ni ach she, Hianiche, Hianiche, meaning he or it used to buy. Then we also have for the imperfect tense, Hia ni u mwij, Hiani u mwij, Hia ni u mwij, Hiani u mwij, Hiani u mwij, Hiani u mwij. Then finally, we have vowel reduction in the future tense. Now, I know I probably mentioned this earlier when we went through the future tense, but one last thing that should be mentioned is that Gaelic verbs in the future tense, anamsir astinach, anamsir astinach, anamsir astinach, anamsir astinach, the future tense, undergo vowel reduction when pronounced. That is, the suffix fidh, the slender one, and the faidh, the broad one, and other suffix endings also, when followed by a pronoun, uh, is pronounced as a short vowel, such as h or h. I'm just using hi or hi to represent a short schwa or short vowel sort of sound, h, rather than the spelling, which is he, even though it's an f, but in Ulster it's pronounced as this, and this suffix is pronounced as a h, so he. When isolated with no pronoun, the aforementioned suffix is pronounced as written. So fidh or faidh is pronounced as he. Let's have a look at some examples. So we have ka, na, ch, ma, kanahama, kanahama, ka, na, ch, ma, kanahama. So I guess reduced here to kana ha, not kana he may or kana ha ma, but we have kanahama, meaning I will buy. Then, as you can see here, when it's on its own, it's pronounced kanahi, kanahi, as opposed to kanaha. So kanahi. I know it's impossible to cover every aspect or nuance of of any language's pronunciation in one video, but hopefully this video has been quite comprehensive and has covered the vast majority of questions somebody might have in terms of Gaelic pronunciation, at least in the Ulster dialect. So just remains for me to say thanks for watching and slán go fóill. Slán go fóill. Goodbye for now.